Alright, I think I'm live. How do we enter the World Builder seminar? You are in it, I believe. 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚔, whatever. I am assuming that, okay, wait, no, he is doing some kind of hosting thing, so you're not cut off. So wait to talk a second. Oh, I'm supposed to wait before I start talking. It's too late for that. I have already started to projector. Tell me what to do, Chuck, and I'll do it. So, I don't know if we're live. I don't know what's going on. I'm becoming more and more resistant to technology. The more technology there is, I don't think it's my age. I think it's just the more technology there is, the more resistant to it that I am becoming, which is probably not a good thing. All right. You know what I really need? If I find it. Yeah, there you go. Harry Gygax is a living fantasy. All right, so we got 26 people in here, Chuck. It looks like we're doing okay. Great. No, can you not see me? Maybe my camera's not working. It should be. Can you not see me? What a horrible way to say that. I should have just said, can you see me? No, sir, you cannot see me. Okay, Halen can see me. All right, so, Grape, you might still be over on the GaryCon site. Kim, you can see me. All right, everybody, it seems to be working. So I think Grape might be stuck over on the GaryCon site and not on the Twitch, the TLG Twitch stream. I'm not going to swear to that because I really don't know how this stuff works. It's all kind of a mystery to me. Grape needs to reload. All right. Green frequency, I guess frequently asked questions. You have answered that question. And really probably reload should always be the first response to anything that any of us do on any of these platforms. A good deal. All right. So we are here for virtual GaryCon. GaryCon 12 virtual, I guess I should say that correctly. Though it is virtual GaryCon, it is still GaryCon 12, done now virtually, thanks to the various and sundry bugs that are wandering around our planet at the moment, mangling our infrastructure. So we have all sequestered ourselves in our homes and offices and gathering virtually. So I guess this is a good thing. I'm waiting to get the all clear from Chuck that everything is working. I think that it is. He's texting me now in Skype. I got it. Excellent. Grape has joined us. All right. Good deal. So we've all gathered in the room. Okay. Let me read what Chuck's got for us. I cannot see. Okay. All right. So it doesn't have anything to do with the troll stream. It's really the GaryCon stream. They're trying to fix something over there. So we're golden. And Chuck Babunski here on the feed is 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚔, and he is working tirelessly to drag Troll Lord games into the modern era and get us up on Twitch and streaming and all other kind of various and sundry sites like Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 and et cetera, et cetera. And he's doing so with great resistance from me. So apparently GaryCon is raiding us. So that works as well. However, yes, Perry, I am diligently fighting him every step of the way, despite his expertise. He's having to fight uphill battles against my I'm not going to say incompetence, but my inability to retain information about how these mediums work. We're gonna go with that, and he is pretty tireless about it. And I know that I give him quite a hard time at times when things aren't going the way perhaps I feel like they should. So at any rate, welcome everybody to our GaryCon panel here, where we're going to be talking about Gary Gygax's world building, but really a lot of this is working with, my experience is working with Gary Gygaxes, the Gygaxes, and Gary obviously most of all. And we'll dive into that in a few minutes. But if you could, anybody who's new to the Troll Lord stream, if you could give us a follow, we surely do appreciate it. Any kind of support you can throw us. We're building this new platform for TLG. We've got a few shows, Jim's Tricks to Trade, that we do on Thursday nights, and then World Builder that we do on Wednesdays, and then an Ask Me Anything on Tuesdays, and then I know Chuck's running some games, and more to come. So, you know, when the unfortunate plague that has hit our country forced GaryCon to close, we jumped at the chance to help Luke and help everyone over there do some streaming. So we just moved everything to a platform that we've been tinkering with for 6 months now and trying to build. So welcome everybody to the Troll Lord GaryCon Twitch stream, and we'll dive into some Gary Gygax goodness here very, very soon. Good deal. I had some problem yesterday, but it was Skype lowering the volume in the background because I was watching with a friend. I don't do this Twitch stuff very often. The video looks really mucky to me. It's supposed to be loud and clear. Zulin, I can't answer that question. I will ask Chuck when he gets in, but my guess is, I know that we are experiencing quite a bit of, across the country, across the world really, a lot of timeouts and just too much traffic on the internet, I think, kind of swallowing everything up. So you may be suffering from that as your service provider tries to feed, you know, whatever and whatever. I don't know how that mess works though. So okay, good deal, Zulin. Yeah, we Tim Burns, who obviously works here at Troll Lord Games, he's losing internet a lot. He lives up in the mountains, and my guess is it's just the traffic is getting so heavy from everybody being quarantined and hanging out at home, and you know, doing everything's going digital in a huge way. And GaryCon is a perfect example of that. In the 10 days they moved that entire convention and onto a digital platform. Obviously, it's not going to be that exact same experience that we all enjoy at GaryCon every year, but and at all the cons that we go to, but it certainly brings us all together, which is really kind of cool. Just 5 years ago, this would not have been possible, and it would have been a much sadder affair that none of us can kind of dive in and see what's going on. The big drawing behind you looks like a mind flare, but not sure. So that piece, see if I can move my head. Man, I don't know if I still have that cover. That is the original pencil drawing of the Monster and Treasure book for Castles and Crusades. And it's 3 trolls. I don't think I have a lot of our books here, but I don't have that one. It's just too old. And it's 3 trolls. One is holding his hands like this, and the other 2 are kind of talking to him as they're going through this pile of treasure. And there's some dwarves sneaking around to steal the treasure from it. It was, in the beginning, there were 3 trolls that founded Troll Lord Games. So that's kind of what Peter did, is he put us all on top of this, on the cover that went on the Monsters and Treasure. He colored it eventually, I think, in Photoshop. That was way back in 2005 or 2006, something like that. But it's a fantastic piece. I do want him to do an oil of it. I've asked him a couple of hundred times. Peter's oils are phenomenal. He did this. Peter Bradley is our artist. He's the primary art director here at Troll Lord Games, and he does most of our covers and a huge amount of our interior art. Business has picked up in the last few years that we've brought on more artists, but Peter's still the guy to go to. And he did, one of the reasons that we hired him back in 2003 or whenever it was, he had done this oil painting of, I don't think it's the Civil War. I think it's the War of 1812. No, it can't be. Maybe it's the Mexican-American War, or whatever, some war in the 1800s. And it's these 5 or 6 bluecoats standing in this copse of trees with muskets and shooting. And it is, the detail on it is just insane, and his oils are just beautiful. So I've been wanting to do an oil of that Monster and Treasure book forever and a day, because it's just an awesome picture. It's got mystique to it, all kinds of stuff. Peter outdid himself on that cover long ago. But we aren't here to talk about Peter Bradley's fantastic art. We're here to talk about Gary Gygax. And though the panel was good morning, GaryCon. The panel was called yes, Virtual GaryCon. We are loving Virtual GaryCon. We wish to be up there, of course, but this is a fantastic follow up. And yeah, I saw Douglas, hello, and DC Clazer. I don't know how to say these names. These names are crazy. They're as crazy as Kickstarter names. We're just always trying to figure out people. We all put our avatars on there. I'm a troll lord, and all that stuff. It makes it turns the naming convention on its head, I suppose. All right, I gotta have a Dr. Pepper before we dive into this. So normally, how's it going, Electromac? And real quick before I dive into it, if you can give us a follow, we would sure appreciate it. Follow the Troll Lord here on the Troll Twitch stream. That's entirely too much for me to say, but we sure do appreciate it. We do a regular bevy of shows throughout the week, and you'll get notifications and all of that stuff. All right, let me turn that thing off. So normally at Gary Con, the last 2 or 3 Gary Con, I've sat down with Chris Clark of Heckaforge Productions and Jeffrey 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕 of Astonishing Swordsman, and we discussed working with Gary Gygax. Of course, Gary worked, Chris worked with Gary first. He started working with Gary back in, 1997 or 98, somewhere on that, bringing out Legendary Adventures. And they worked together for a few years, and then I started working with Gary. Trollwood started working with Gary in 2000, I believe. We signed contracts. It might have been 2001, but I think it's 2000, and the first books came out in 2001, and we worked with Gary very closely with him up until he passed away in 2008. Jeffrey 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕 was one of those people that Gary hired apart from Trollwood. Jeff didn't work for us. He was a writer, and Gary hired him, and Jeffrey's skill is phenomenal. His writing is amazing, and he quickly became Gary's go-to guy for almost everything in building the Castle Zaggig. First, the Yggsburg setting, the city setting, and the lands around Castle Zaggig, and Jeff became kind of the main writer, one of the main writers for creating that city, fleshing out, I should say. Gary created it. He just wanted each neighborhood put together. He wanted. When you look in Yggsburg, it's been too long since I've looked at it, but there's like 14 neighborhoods, 14 sections of the city, and we had absolutely beautiful map done for it, and then Gary wanted all of it fleshed out. Major shops and personages and NPCs and all of this other stuff. Gary, he was a consummate world builder. He did this a lot, and so he hired, there's about 8 or 9 writers that he brought on. I can't remember all of them at this point. But Jeff quickly kind of rose to the top on both of his. Thank you for the subscription, Vertex Artist. Vertex Artist. So Jeffrey quickly rose to the top of that, and he wrote several of the city books, and then he became Gary's co-author on the Upper Works, the Castle Zaggig Upper Works, which had 5 books in it, and that was the first kind of the step into the Castle Zaggig that Gary and I had planned out to do over several years, a couple of box sets each year, so that we were, I'm straightening with it. We're all here in the house, so everyone was evicted from their schools, so everyone has gathered, much like you guys here. So anyway, so Gary brought Jeffrey on board to kind of co-write. Gary had created the skeleton of Castle Zaggig, and he knew it was on each level. He knew, the encounters, and it was mapped out, and all of this other stuff. But he wanted it fleshed out, so he wrote, and Jeffrey wrote, and they worked together to bring this Upper Works to life. Peter Bradley was the main artist for it. He was doing all the maps. Jason Walton did a huge number of the interiors for it. But normally Jeffrey and Chris joined me in this seminar. So what I want to say before we kind of go further, and don't let me hog the sound waves, the airwaves with whatever we're doing here, the video waves. Don't let me hog it. If you have any questions, put them in the stream. I'll be more than happy to answer them about anything about Gary, working with Gary, projects that we worked on, projects that we wanted to work on, where we were going with things, how it ended, how it began, all of that stuff. I'll be more than happy to field any questions about anything, and I will do my best to answer it, so long as I don't get myself in any kind of legal issues with any parties anywhere, I'm good with everybody, so that should not be an issue. I drew some dinosaur art for Gary's Dangerous Journeys. Oh yeah, although never published. Spoke to him often on phone and via snail mail. Was his family able to retain some of the art he received? I'm not sure. There was a huge amount of IP, intellectual property, I know that was saved, and I didn't have privy to. It was saved in Gary's house and in his estate when he passed away. And all of that went to Gail. So Gail Gygax owns all of that at the moment. Not I say that at the moment, like it's going still. I don't know any secrets about anything. She owns the IP. So my guess would be that if he purchased the art from you from an ownership perspective, a lot of times companies like my own will do. I'll purchase art for one-time use, and then it reverts to the artist. I do that frequently because I like people to own what they create. I think it's so you can go make more money off of it later. Sometimes I'll own the whole thing, but mostly it reverts to the artist. And to answer your question, depending on how your contract was signed, you may still own it, but probably Gary liked to own things. He really liked to own all of it. So my guess is it's in Gail Gygax's reservoir of IP that Gary still has, or that they still have this stuff. I know there's absolute mountains of it. He had sent me. I've had file folders, not physical, but digital file folders of just lots and lots of stuff that he had purchased over the years and just kind of accumulated. And stuff that he'd written, of course. He's written mountains of stuff, and that was coming my way as well. I released them to him, just hoping families. I'm sure they do. I would be very surprised if they don't. Well, let me ask you, do you still have copies of it? If you still have copies of it, then at least it's not lost, and gone. You could put it on your website and say property of, I'm not sure, Gail, the company was called TROLLZAH. I'm not sure what she changed it. I think it's Gygax Memorial Fund may be the name of her company now, but I'm not. Oh, so you don't even have copies of it. So you send them hard copies via snail mail. Got it, yeah. It's kind of weird, we were, Max Golden, who founded the company with me back in 2000, he just sold his house, and they found a whole box of, when we founded it, much like you, the artist sent hard copies in, and we went down and had them, we didn't have a scanner, and we scanned them in, God knows where. So Max found this box of hard copies of just all this art, this hard copy stuff. Some of it I'd never seen, so it had gone to him, and then he had not rejected it necessarily, but we used it for another project, and we never used it. So we did the same thing you did there, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in a box. I'm not sure how well cataloged that stuff is. I know that his name is escaping me. A friend of mine went in there. What is his name? That's just going to drive me crazy. I've known him for 20 years. He went in and helped him kind of help Gail organize everything. So I'll bet you it's in there somewhere. Did Gary ever run a game for you? So, that's one of the saddest things of my experience with Gary. I worked with Gary for 8 years. We did 2 conventions in Lake Geneva, specifically for Gary. Lake Geneva Con, we did 4 times in the summer, and then we did Winter Dark 3 times in the winter. In December, I think one was in January. We went to Game Fest, and we went to Gen Con when it was in Milwaukee, and of course we went to Paul Stromberg. Yes, thank you, Tim. Yes, that's who's doing it. I've known Paul forever. I can't believe I forgot his name. It's all the internet days. I completely lost. I got sidetracked with. Yeah, so Gary's running it. So I had we would run these conventions, and the trolls would come up, and I had a pretty strict rule for all the troll lords, and this fell for me too, that only if there was a slot available could we take the extra time to play with Gary, because there were people coming to these conventions that were paying the door fee, and they get first pick. And there was never, I know Mark got to play with him, I think Davis did, there was never a slot open that I actually managed to jump into and game with Gary. So sadly, I never gamed with Gary. I played a couple of board games with him. Not even board games. It was an Egyptian game. I don't know what it was called. It was a long time ago. But mostly I sat around Gary's porch, and we would drink a little bit and eat dinner together and talk business and politics. And he and I'm a huge history buff, and he was a huge history buff, so we would sit around and talk history quite a bit. That was one of the things that we enjoyed doing. Last conversation I had with him, in fact, we were watching the History Channel there at Winter Dark, and that was in January, and he passed away in March of 2008. So that was our last face-to-face. But sadly, I did not ever get to game. I will say this: I walked by his at Game Fest 1. So when Gen Con leaves Milwaukee, Game Fest opens up. They run 2 shows there, which is cool. Nice little show. It never quite got the traction. But we went, and Gary came out as a guest of honor, of course. And I remember he was he was running a game. I'm pretty sure Peter Bradley was in it. He was running a game, and I was in the booth, and I was coming by to go get a Coke or Dr. Pepper, but whatever. And someone had done something to the monster or whatever, and the monster cast magic missile back to Shaman. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. Too long. And Gary goes, he cast a spell, boogity, 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 boo. And when he did that, and I was just walking by, and I didn't hear most of the context for Gary's whatever, the sound he was making. But when I heard that, I just fell over laughing. So I can only imagine that he was an absolute blast to sit down at the table with and game. I mean, he was always such a nice fellow, and he was always nice to gamers and to people who loved his work. He was always super, and went out of his way to help people to learn the game, to play the game, to not walk away from his table upset or what have you. I just remember lots of laughter and stuff coming from that table. So I missed out. I wish that my rules hadn't been so stringent, nor had I followed them. But I did not get the game with Gary, sadly. Gaetano, yeah, absolutely. So if you look at Yggsberg is a city that he built. It's in a peninsula on this kind of very small area. I can't remember the area. The surrounding area is only probably 25 or 40 miles or something. It's not huge. Now, the map we did was huge. But in that city, and this is one of the books, if you want to know how Gary approached world building, and that's definitely what our discussion is about today. He wrote, and we published, so he wrote for us, not for us, he wrote it for himself, but in the gaming community, he wrote a series of books called the 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚕 Fantasy World books. And these were the primary pieces that we published for Gary. Now, we did all kinds of stuff. Castles and Crusades. We did Legendary Adventures. We did fiction pieces. We did D20. We did a lot of stuff with Gary, but the stuff he was the most proud of, and the stuff I liked the most of all the things that we did, was the 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕 Fantasy World series. And this one is book 3. I don't know if my glare is. That's Gary Gygax's Living Fantasy. If you can get a hold of that book, I strongly, strongly recommend you get a hold of this book. It'll give you a good idea, a good insight into Gary's approach to world building and world building in general. And it'll kind of give you a different take on things. I remember there's a whole chapter in here, and it might be my favorite chapter. When I run games, I'm not real fond of I shouldn't say fond, that's not a good word for it. I don't like clerics that are just medics. I would rather the cleric be more than just a healer, more than just someone who's patching up everybody as they get chopped to pieces in the combat. And there's a section in the Living Fantasy that discusses what healing, if doctors could actually magically heal, what it would be like, how it would change the way society is actually built and developed. So when he was world building, he took the actual real world consequences or impacts or whatever it is, whatever word I'm looking for. I need Tim here. He's usually the guy who tells me what words that I don't know. His vocabulary is much bigger than mine. Gary would he took these real world circumstances and ejected them into the fantasy world. And it makes it, when you're reading Gord the Rogues, his novels, and when you're reading his adventures, it makes it so much more believable. You're more part of it. You're more, the suspension of disbelief is far easier if there is real world elements that are sprinkled throughout it. It's certainly a philosophy that I took tremendously. Oh, thank you for the comment on the World of Air. I was just about to say I took his writings, because of course I read it and edited stuff and before we published it, and it bled itself. The philosophy of it bled itself into my own World of Air. Only kind of created, only expanded by my knowledge of history and anthropology and whatnot. Because you can see Gary bringing that into his settings and material as I do, as most game masters do. You bring this stuff in. So when you get into Yggsberg, which is kind of what we talked about, the Living Fantasy. The name of the book is Gary Gygax's Living Fantasy. Let's see if I can get that. It is obvious. Oh, damn it! Can't find my camera. So we don't sell it anymore. Sadly, we lost the licenses in 2008. But maybe on eBay or a used bookstore or somewhere it's floating around out there. Definitely check that book out. The whole series is it's a great series. It started with the Canting Crew, then the World Builder, Living Fantasy, Book of Names, Dan Cross's Insidiae, which is How to Build Adventures, and then there's Cosmos Builder and Nation Builder. Those are the ones that we got out, that we actually published, and there's two more. There was a revision of the Canting Crew, a second World Builder, and there was another one too. Gary had, he did this, it was going to be an encyclopedic series, and it was open-ended. So if you can find them, definitely hunt them down. They're really good books. And even if you're not world building, some of these books are insanely helpful at the table. That the World Builder, let's see if I got, I'm going to leave that drawer open so you guys don't have to hear that god-awful screeching anymore. So the World Builder is the second one. I don't know if you can see that. This is my favorite cover. I love the artist. I don't know this guy's name. This is so long ago. This was 2002. Matt Milberger. So he made these puzzle pieces, and it was just, you can see those puzzle pieces. Anyways, it was just a brilliant approach to this. And never, I was thinking of dragon or whatever, but this artist looked at it completely different, and he visualized this puzzle. It's just really, really cool. The Canting Crew also has, so the Canting Crew, the first of the series, and Gary's favorite, if you look at those little wire things, the Canting Crew is based off of Renaissance, the whole cant that thieves speak back in England back in the 1800s and 1700s. And he built an entire book off of that. He took the language, and from that language he kind of created this whole approach to creating different thieves, rogues, assassins, beggars, drifters, whatever, con artists. He created this whole thing. Now, a lot of that is based, again, on real world stuff, because when you get into, what was that movie? Gangs of New York did it really well. There was classifications for types of thieves. It wasn't, you were just a thief like you play in Dungeons and Dragons or Castles and Crusades. It was, I don't know, it's just crazy. And I know he took them. There's the coin shavers. We got grab and run thieves. We got confidence men, foot pads, burglars, cut purses, kidnappers, bawdy housekeepers, hijackers. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The Canting Crew really, and if you really want to get a good idea of Gary's approach to world building, the Canting Crew is the place to start, because it's really down in the gutter of things. It's the meat of a society. It's the streets. It's those people who are struggling, the thieves, the whatever, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. It's kind of that, whatever, the tissue, not even the tissue, the sinew underneath the city. It's a great book, and you can see the real world stuff spill into it. And the World Builder that followed, I think I might have missed a question in there. Real quick, if you have it and you can follow us, we surely do appreciate it. We love any support you can throw our way. Someone is selling an autographed copy of the Canting Crew for $1,500. Holy Carolina! Good, good night. Well, there you go. I'm not sure you want to buy that one, but but I would definitely hunt down the series of these books if you can. Robert, the World Builder is a fantastic book. The strange thing about the World Builder, so it is a little different than the others. There's very little text in it. It's really a book of tables and tables and tables and tables. The text that you do see in it, I actually cajoled Gary into allowing Todd and I to put in there, because I wanted things to find. I didn't know what some of this stuff was, some of these types of houses or buildings, or particularly when it came to temples. I didn't know what particular rooms were what. So we wanted him to define, and he didn't really want that. He wanted it just to be a very, very encyclopedic reference book for terminology. And the weird thing about that book, when we were laying it out, Todd and I did a little bit of that writing. Gary did some of it. Dan Cross, I think, did some. But my vocabulary went through the roof. My descriptive text when I was running games, it's just, you could tell it was like this renaissance. It didn't last but 6 weeks after I finished working on the book, and then it all just faded away and into the gray matter of my brain. But just having to go through all of these lists and read all of these words and define these terms and then kind of find out what they are, it bled into my game. So if you can get the World Builder, Gary Gygax's World Builder, and read it, which is a lot of readable material in there, I definitely do that. Definitely do it. It'll help your game out immensely. But so the World Builder was a really good one. It actually was the best-selling one of all of them. It was already gone through a second print and heading for a third print when he passed away. Now, after the World Builder, Gary, so he writes The Canton Crew, and he wrote World Builder with Dan Cross, and then he wrote Living Fantasy. After that, he was really, at that point, the encyclopedic was expanding, and he had outlines that he wanted writers to work from, because he had begun working on 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕 and other stuff and Legendary Adventures. The other four are not written by Gary, but they're edited and overseen by Gary. And in Book of Names is the next one. Strongly, if you can get a hold of this, it's got like, I don't know, 100,000 names in it and a name generator, and it's got, I'll just read to you. Yes, I'm running a game at 6 tonight, I believe, and it's going to be a hoot because I've never done anything online, so we'll see how that goes. It's got British, Gaelic, African, Berber, Ancient Egyptian, Amerindian, Aztec, Inca, Mayan, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and so on and so on and so on. Mediterranean, Arabic, Greek, Italian. It's spoken by male and female, and surnames. It's a fantastic resource. That was followed by Dan Cross's Insidiae, which is, how to build and run adventures, and that was crossed by Cosmos Builders and Nation Builders, how to build nations and how to build cosmology. All of these books, fantastic books, and you can see his whole approach to world building beyond just putting an adventure together or running some characters through something. There was a world here that began cosmologically, is that a word? It began beyond the material and becomes this whole kind of fabric that you can weave your way into. And you see it, those books really, especially the first three, and particularly Living Fantasy, if you want to kind of get a good idea of his approach to it, is just a really good way of understanding Gary's whole world building drive. So what you DMing, man? So I'm running a Castles and Crusades adventure in the Darkenfold. For those of you who have played in my big game, normally at GaryCon, I run a game of about 20 to 25 people on Friday night. That's what we call the big game, and obviously that's not going to happen this year. And I don't think there's any way to do that online, not yet. Douglas knows. So Douglas has been in many of my games at various conventions, and they're always in the Darkenfold, and he has been playing the same paladin. No, it's a fighter that wants to be a knight. Wait a minute. So I want to take this caller quick. Luke was calling me. I'm not sure if I should answer that or not. I'm going to text Luke real quick. This is his show, so maybe he wants me to do something. Let's see. Luke, I'm live streaming in virtual GaryCon now. Period. So we'll see. Do you want me to phone you in? LOL. We'll see what. We'll see what he says. No, he said, oh no, and LOL. So it's no great mystery or no great urgency from Luke. So good deal there. He has the GaryCon's leader there has been under the gun, as many of you know, as this thing is kind of the deluge of whatever came from wherever and has shut all of us down and sent us scurrying to whatever houses that we all call home. He's been dealing with moving this entire convention. And on top of that, of course, I was going to well, yeah, that's not going to happen. He wanted me to join him in another stream, but I don't think that's going to work. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm here till 1. It's very interesting trying to manage all this stuff. And on top of all of the stuff that he's having to deal with GaryCon, of course, the National Guard has been partially mobilized, I think, in California to help. Medical units have come out. I know there's a lot of rumors about martial law and all that craziness, but really the whole thing is Guard units will come out and help with the logistics of these hospitals trying to fix the overload of patients that they're getting and getting supplies to where they need to be. and so forth and so on. So, so Luke says hello, and his apologies for interrupting. I'll holler at him after the stream. Very cool. But yeah, he's been under the gun, no doubt. Let's see. Question: what was the preferred order that worlds were built? Maps first, then locations, then civilizations, for example. What was the first element that usually sparks new worlds? Now, for Gary, I can't speak for Gary. Obviously, he approached world building. I mean, he approached the whole design process very differently. If he was working on an adventure, then that's kind of what he focused on, and he didn't work beyond that. But I think in looking at the way that he developed 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕, he certainly had a cosmos in his head, but that he didn't worry so much about actual making on the ground reality where the NPCs and the PCs are kind of weaving their way here. So off of just kind of anecdotally, off of that, I would say that Gary began his world building very small. He began it, and I remember one of the things, the first thing he wrote for us, in fact, was a tie-in to The Lost City of Gaxmore, which is written by Ernie and Luke Gygax. We published that first in 2001, and part of the whole package deal was Gary was going to write, we were putting the World of Air down, and Gary was going to write the kind of a tie-in adventure. And he wrote this little bitty 3-page, I probably have it right here. He wrote this little 3-page adventure that is, it's almost impossible to get a hold of. I'm trying to get you the title now. It was only published once in one book that we did, Search for a Lost City by Gary Gygax, and it's in this codex. So if you have this codex, you have it. If you don't, that book's relatively hard to get a hold of. But in it is this farmhouse. It literally is just a farmhouse, and these 6 or 7 gnolls are attacking it. There's the farm family, and the whole purpose of it, of course, is to save the farmers from the gnolls. And that really becomes this seed that from which the plant of the whole Gaxmore thing comes from. And when you look at 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔, it's sort of the same thing. When he develops 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔 doesn't necessarily have anything to do with 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚔, and it's really just a city, right, of whatever population. I can't remember it. They've got all of these books. I got this huge drawer of books. So this is 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔. This is what I'm talking about here. Absolutely. If you can get a hold of this, honestly, it's not my favorite thing that Gary wrote for us. That would have to be The Hermit, but it's a city setting and the surrounding environs, and it's just, man, is it a fantastic book. And it's not really an adventure. You're not going to go into there and be on an adventure. It's a plethora of adventures woven into this city, and that's what developing the city was. Hey, NYD&D, how's it going, man? It's just, if you can get a hold of it in any way, you get it. It's a fantastic setting, but you can see what he did is he created this city with his population, and then he zeroed in from that, right? That's what the city books were about. He would take each individual neighborhood of 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔 and expand that out, so that when you're going into 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔, if you have, now we only got, I think we printed 2 of them, and we had 3 in production when the licenses were pulled. So, but there was, I'd have to ask Jeffrey. Jeffrey Talanian of Astonishing Swordsman was heading that up, and I want to say there was 12 or 14, but there's districts. My map's not in the book. There's districts in the city, and he wanted each district covered in its own book. So he kind of zoomed in from that, and then I think that once that was done, that's what he wanted published first, before he did 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚔, before he did the big expansionary adventure beyond. He wanted the immediate world around 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚔 completely fleshed out. He wanted it fleshed out with the city. He wanted it fleshed out with from the city all the way down from alleyways to temples and the gods beyond that, so that when you played 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚕𝚔, you got the entire feel of it. But it was very interesting to me that he actually started with the city. When we signed the contracts to do 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚘𝚘, I mean, look, this is, people always talk about upper works, but this is a 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚘𝚘 book. 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚘 is part of the series. It's the first part of the series. It was going to have, I can't remember now how many boxes. He had corrected me a couple of times because I said it publicly, but it was at least 5 box sets that we were going to do for the entire 𝚃𝚘𝚘𝚘𝚘 dungeon. and 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔 was the first one. So he really, I think, to answer your question, he really started and he grounded things first and then built outward from there. So I'm sure that he had, all kinds of cosmological concepts in his head as he was designing 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔 itself. Absolutely fantastic. If you can get a hold of 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚔, definitely do it. And I do this every time I talk about Gary. I'm going to put a shout out if you can get a hold of the Hermit. It's an adventure he wrote. It's one of the few that we did. I'm trying to see if I missed any questions in here. What was Gary's favorite historical era? How much did he influence what he created? The Renaissance. He loved the Renaissance. He and I always used to kind of joke back and forth on kind of a medieval period. I liked about 700 to 900, but he liked the Renaissance. And I finally, and I can tell you this, I cannot speak for Gary. I wish that he was still alive and I could talk to him, because about a month ago, or 2 months ago, whatever the hell it was, I read a book on the 30 Years' War. I read a lot of history, and most of the history that I read is medieval, Native American history, Civil War history, and World War I. A lot of Habsburg stuff thrown in there. But so I read a book on the 30 Years' War because I was just curious. And that got me curious on reading more of the religious wars between the Muslims and the Catholics in the 1500s and 1600s. And when I'm reading these things, everything kind of came together for the way Gary saw RPGs and what we were doing. When you look at it, and I'm gonna wander off into the historical field for just a moment. I'll try not to bore you too much, but when you look at the 30 Years' War and the wars in and around the 1600s and 1500s, it was very small, very professional armies. So if you had an army of 30,000 men, that was extraordinarily large. They were mostly 9,000 men, 1,000 cavalry, and maybe 10 cannons or something like that. But they were professional armies. They were made up of they were professional armies, and they were made up of mercenaries, lots and lots of mercenaries, and these mercenaries would be in groups and in bands, and they would travel around Europe. I finished a book on the sacking of Rome in 1527, and who actually sacked it. It's the Spanish emperor, but he's using German Protestants, Lutherans mostly, these cavalrymen, and then Italian infantry and some Spanish infantry and mercenaries that actually utterly completely devastate Rome for 30 days. It's the most horrific sack I've ever read about. But when I'm reading it, I'm seeing these small professional armies that are using these horribly cumbersome but insanely deadly weapons, the early cannons and the arquebuses and all this other stuff. And it hit me. This is exactly why he liked a game mechanics. How do you run a game? I'll get to that question in a minute. This is exactly the way role-playing games play out. So if you were to take a medieval peasant army and march it against 3 10th-level wizards who are casting fireballs, that medieval peasant army is going to get completely annihilated. And it struck me, and that's clearly what they had learned in the 30 Years' War and that time period, that these armies of just people attacking, they're just going to all die, and there's no point in doing it. Armies were very expensive to get all of the equipment and the gear and all this other stuff. And that's sort of what easily you can kind of bring that over into an RPG world very easily. And I think that's probably why Gary liked the Renaissance, because that obviously this is the Renaissance era. This is when we're fighting, and that's what a fantasy world would be like. I suspect that magic is real. It's not imaginary. Someone can rain a fireball down on your group of 40 first-level characters, and they're all going to die because they're each going to take 10d6 points of damage. So that's one of the things that I think that why Gary likes the Renaissance, because it actually, if you take magic into account and you take the primitive technology, and I hate that word primitive, but the new technology, the nascent technology of firearms, and they kind of come together and they kind of actually work. Kill them all quickly. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, in my own game, we've done a number of large battles, and especially when Aristobulus Max is playing his magic user, and he was 18th level or something in this huge pitched battle, and he cast a fireball into a cohort of just soldiers, first and second level soldiers, and it annihilated them because they each took 18d6 points of damage. And you can save all you want; it doesn't matter. You're going to minimally take minimally 9 points of damage if Mac rolled 1 all the way down. So it doesn't equate kind of to old Viking war, but it does equate to Renaissance war. So I kind of had that epiphany about Gary. I suspect that's why he liked the Renaissance war. He definitely did. We had finished all the the player's guide to the Legendary Adventures was done, and we were on the GM's guide to the Legendary Adventures, and I think the Monster book was done. But if you look at the covers, now Peter Bradley still has those covers because he owns them. All the characters on them are Renaissance. They have Renaissance armor, Renaissance helmets, and weaponry minus the arquebuses and stuff. And I always used to grumble at Gary because I wanted him to be chainmail, and tight shields and Viking axes, but he didn't want any of that. None of that. All right, so I think first off, everyone, if you could, anyone, give us a follow if you have not followed us already. We certainly do appreciate it and appreciate all the support you guys are throwing our way. And definitely hop over to Gary Conn's after the feed and give them a follow too if you have not as well. I thank everybody for throwing that our way. Let's see. So we had one question: how do you run a game with 25 players and not have a combat take come around to take 8 hours? Well, I don't want to use this as a platform to pitch Castles and Crusades, but I use our own game system, CNC, and it is insanely simple. There's no half actions, or you take one action around and that helps immensely because you roll initiative. What do? That's what you do. We go to the next person. So it makes the rounds go super, super fast. Honestly, I don't know how to do it. I get so much energy from the people sitting at the table. Everyone's having so much fun and laughing and joking, and stuff's coming my way, and they're playing off of each other. And so the games are just phenomenally fun. I mean, I cracked a joke the other day on some Facebook or something about I'm going to miss the entertainment of running that game because I spend about 3 or 4 hours, however long we do it, laughing mostly because it's just an absolute blast. We're going to try to do that on the stream tonight. I don't know how it's going to. I think we're doing it in Discord. I don't know what any of that means, but we're going to try to do it. I don't know if we'll be able to get the same energy, but we're going to definitely give it a shot. But constantly moving. So when a new idea or concept was brought up, what is the best way to incorporate that into the existing world you already have? Well, it kind of depends. I mean, if it's a technological change, it's a little bit more difficult. But if it's cosmological, it's not too bad. But the thing to keep in mind about world building, and this is what's really cool when you're kind of creating this world, for lack of anything else, that's what we're talking about, is it's huge. And if you think about our own world today, there's I get messages over here if I'm doing something wrong because I'm only partially aware of what I'm doing. So a huge shout out to Chuck Kumbo, Babunski, and Tim who keeps this whole thing floating, because if I was doing it, it would be working. None of it would be working. So the thing about when you have new concepts coming into your setting or your world is how large the world is. And if you think about Earth today, I mean, you can look at, we certainly have a multitude of cultures and societies, and I know we get very caught up in the United Nations talking about whatever they're talking about, and the United States and the Euro and Prince Henry and Meghan or whatever. We get kind of caught up in this thing, and I think it's very easy to forget that in South America, there are still tribes that are living in the Stone Age. I remember looking at some of those pictures the other day, and I thought how strange that these people are living still in the Stone Age, and they've had a little bit of, just a little bit of an encounter with the modern world. And I thought to myself, I wonder what their life expectancy is. I mean, it's going to be less than ours, but here we have literally people living digitally online, just, whatever, at 10,000 miles, I don't know how far South America is, however far Brazil is from it, but several thousand miles down the globe, and they're living in the Stone Age. So I think that, and they're perfectly happy, right? They're not looking at us thinking, oh, I wish I had that couch. They don't even know it exists. They don't care. They're perfectly happy people. If you want a really good, the movie's hard to watch, but it's, what is that? It's a Mel Gibson film. I know he's kind of anathema to some folks, but it was a fantastic movie, Apocalypto, which kind of it fits today's current climate. But if you watch Apocalypto, you'll see this and I'm digressing way off of your question there, but you'll see this in the first part. Now, the last 3/4 of it is pretty brutal Mayan Indian encounters with whatever group or band that our heroes are from. But if you watch the first 20 minutes of it, it's just these people living in the woods, living in the Stone Age, and they're happy. They're laughing, they're hunting, they're cracking jokes, pulling pranks on each other. It's really, yeah, Barry, I'm all over the place. It really, if you get a chance to watch the movie, I strongly recommend it. If I remember correctly, they speak Mayan in the film or some type of Mesoamerican language. They treat the subject realistically. They treat them just like they actually are. They're just humans, right? They're not special humans. They're just humans. And that's the thing, I think, when you're building your world, when you're doing your setting, to always keep in mind is that it's huge. So new concepts can be injected easily. And if you think about the spread of conceptual ideas, just think of Marco Polo. I mean, and I know he's kind of a pool joke now. We shout Marco and do something Polo or whatever. But this is a guy who got up one day and said, I think I'm going to walk over here. And he went to Africa first, I think, and he visited all of these extraordinarily, to him, exotic peoples and societies and locations. Of course, to them it was just Tuesday, and then he went to the Far East and did the same thing. But he transferred ideas both directions. And so these concepts that are new, you can integrate them into your setting by doing that, by simply having someone come from a far land where this isn't exotic, this isn't unique, this is just Tuesday, and they've brought it over and into this campaign setting. So that's generally how I would handle adding that into it. And digression is good. Well, sometimes. Thank you for the vote of confidence, but sometimes. What about all the pantheons of the fantasy races? Why are there no huge religious wars like the Christian? Yeah, that's very, very interesting. When you get into, I'm going to walk on some very, very, thin ice here. I got to be very careful the way you word things in today's world, whatever, because for obvious reasons. But humans aren't races. There's just a Homo sapien. That's what we are. It doesn't matter what your religion is or what the color of your skin is or what your ethnic background is. None of that matters. We're Homo sapiens. We're the same species. But in a fantasy world, that's completely different. A dwarf is not a Homo sapien. A man, a human, is. An elf is not. An orc is not. A goblin is not. These are different species. You might have some, what's it called, when two species cross over, speciation. We're used to thin ice in Canada. There you go, Willie. That's good. Well, I'm down in Arkansas, so we don't get much thin ice. There's a lot of mud and mosquitoes. But so that's kind of the thing that when you're looking at, racism today is a different concept than racism would be between, like, say, dwarves and elves. And Tolkien actually captures that the most. If you've ever read the Silmarillion, he creates the fabric of why these two types of people didn't get along and fought each other and slew each other and all of that stuff. But there would certainly be, and you can see it in the world of Erd, there are certainly races who detest other races, and they fight and they kill one another. And there would definitely be religious wars. Because at the end of the day, there's this fantastic book. It's been years since I read it, and it's a dated book, so be wary when you dive into it. But it's called the something imperative. Damn it, biological imperative. I think that's what it's called. But in it, he postulates the idea behind any living organism, whether it's a single cell or whether it's primates or whatever it is. Their primary goal is procreation, continuation of the species, and the concept is to do that you have to have food supplies. You have to have resources to survive, and that's what drives everything. Everything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is or who, or that's at the end of the day, whether it's the religious creed driving it or it's the national creed or whatever it is, it's about resources. And that same concept would certainly play. Now that's his, you can buy the theory or not. I leave that up to the viewer. But that same concept would play over into anything in a fantasy environment. And you would certainly have that. I do that in Erd. gently. I don't dive into it, but like there's great antipathies between stone giants and trolls. The two don't mix. In Erd as well, the dwarves are the elder of the races, and the elves had done something in the history. I won't go into it, but they've done something to infuriate many of the peoples of the world. So many people hate elves. They don't like the elves. They resent them. So there are these kind of concepts. Now, religious wars are very different because it just depends on the world that you're building. And if you take Erd, for example, it's a polytheistic world where the gods are real. If you're a Ňād is kind of the people that are based on Mesoamericans. If you worship a war god there, it's actually the same entity that the war god is over in the Viking lands. It just has a different name. But it's the same actual physical deity. So religious wars take on a different aspect. That said, there certainly are. There's a god, Orndul, in the world of Erd, who has twice waged these brutal wars. And we don't call them religious wars because it's not necessarily two religions, but it certainly is the followers of Orndul serving him to destroy other people. The nature of it's slightly different because you don't have two religious concepts necessarily. It's really about power at that point in a polytheistic world. Now, in a monotheistic world, it's a little bit different. So it gets a little bit more tricky in that, but there definitely would. I mean, that's definitely everyone would be fighting everybody for the wood for that food, and that's just the way it is. you can watch anything out in the wilderness. I got a bird feeder outside, and good sweet Lord, you watch the cardinals tear into each other, and the blue jays tear into each other, and they tear into the cardinals. If a brown thrasher comes in, the blue jays scatter in every which direction, and when the woodpecker shows up, if people don't flee, he beats the crap out of them, and then they flee. The only ones that get a pass are the little chickadees who don't give a crap. They come in and just steal food down everybody's mouth and run like crazy. So conflict constantly. Yeah, apparently I'm doing it. I got another stream after this. It's going to be a jibber jabbering day. I wish there was a way that we could kind of reciprocate the whole thing. And it's much easier in an auditorium. But everybody, thank you for showing. We still got 30 minutes to go, but I wanted to thank everybody for showing up for the stream here. Surely to appreciate you supporting and helping out DairyCon 12 virtual. It's been a phenomenal thing everyone over there has done. Just absolutely phenomenal moving this entire thing like they've done onto the virtual community. And I just want to say, I know that we're all being bombarded day and night, every moment, by negative news and bad news and numbers that we can't quite comprehend that are just moving so fast. And people are complaining about a couple of knuckleheads down in Miami Beach, who didn't want to give up their spring break. And now I don't know what's going on with the licking of the toilet, but whatever. People are going to do what they're going to do. But I got to say, the West, and I cannot speak for the East because I wasn't following the news that closely, but for the West, we, especially here in the United States and Canada, so far as I can see, when the powers that be said, hey, everybody need to go home. Just go home for a little while and let this thing blow over. Everybody went home. A little bit of complaining, not very much. Everybody went home and settled in, and we're converting to this, whatever. We're being forced into this new digital world, whether we wanted to or not. And it's gone fairly decently. I mean, no one's rioting, right? There's no one shooting people in the streets. There's no revolution going on. There was kerfluffles over some toilet paper, but that's to be forgiven. People get a little scared when they can't. Toilet paper is an important thing. So I got to do a shout out to everybody. Everybody's done a really fantastic job pulling this thing together and working from home. Yes, the chickadees are crazy. It is literally the craziest bird I've ever seen. All the birds will be fighting, and the chickadee, for those of you who don't know, is about an inch, 2 inches long, and little bitty white fellow with a black head, and it'll swoop in, steal food from anybody. He doesn't care who's fighting. He doesn't care. He, she, whatever. They just swoop in and grab a seed and get out. They are absolutely. If you haven't set up a bird feeder, I strongly recommend you do. And they are just hours of entertainment. Very relaxing too. Just nice to watch them do all of their things. Let's see, did I miss an amazing move to virtual? Would have been my first GC live. It was supposed to be conference next week, but this is great too, super cool, or super good. I hope they continue the virtual in a big way next year. Probably will. I know that they were doing a lot of streams anyway, Zulin, but my guess is now that, depending on what's going on next year, my guess is now that this will become part of the fabric. And I really think that I'm kind of an optimistic guy. I'll always look on the bright side of things. I think what we all collectively are experiencing right now is a major shift of our society and culture and our economy. And it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be 100% different 2 weeks from now. But now a whole new world is being, we're waking up to a whole new world. And it's functioning to a large degree, and we've only just started. So I suspect we'll see a little bit of permanency in the changes that we're experiencing now. Let's see, question. What were the timelines of completion of material? Was there something that Gary just kept working on and adjusting and improving that one project that you want to be perfect but never meet high expectations? No. Gary would write the manuscript, and when he was done with it, he was done with it, and he would send it to us. I think that he had enough time in publishing, and I've been doing this since 99, 2000, and I understand it. I understand David Chenault, my brother, who does a lot of writing for us. He's constantly revisiting stuff. He sent me a book we're supposed to get out last week, but didn't. A Stranger Among Us, a little adventure that he did, and he sent it to me and said, "Okay, I'm done." And then I sent it to editing, and Dan Cross was editing it. And David sent it to me. And said, I made some adjustments to it because he just keeps constantly going back to it. Gary didn't do that much. Once that manuscript left him and landed on my desk, he moved on to it. He had an absolute plethora of material that he wanted to do. The 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕, everyone always talks about 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕. That's what we're most interested in, from both our youth, and then just the idea of it was just so pure awesome that this is what we wanted to feed into our game. So that was part of what Gary was working on. His primary thing was Kings of England, Kings of France, a board game that he and I had been working on. I had nothing to do with it. I was the publisher. He was sending me material, and so that I could know what to get price quotes. So it was Gary's creation. It was certainly not mine. But that was he was most enthusiastic about. But he also had, while he was doing 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕 and the Yigsburg City setting, managing that and writing and working with Jeffrey on 𝚃𝚘𝚕𝚕, he was writing the Legendary Adventures, editing and cleaning up the Legendary Adventures series. And the Legendary Adventures series, really it's a shame that one didn't come out. We were about, when he passed away, we were about a month from sending the first book to print. Because on that one, you would have gotten a really good idea of his cosmology of game building that goes into world building. Because he had desert supplements, he had forest supplements, he had planar supplements. And then there was a Renaissance supplement, kind of a futuristic thing. There was just tons and tons of stuff that was coming out for Legendary Adventures. On top of that was the board game that I mentioned. On top of that was he was re-releasing the Gord novels, and I think he was writing a new one with Carrie Burgoyne. So there was so much, and then on top of that, he still was doing stuff with the Gygaxian Fantasy World Series, Capital Crusade. And I think we were out of Dungeons and Dragons. Then we stopped after D20 went belly up in 2005. We did not. That was 4th edition time frame, so we weren't doing D&D in those days, but we were definitely doing CMC and just other stuff. So he had mountains of stuff. But I will say this about Gary. He didn't revisit stuff much. Once he was done with it. Now, obviously, when we put it together and would send him a PDF of a galley copy, he would make changes and adjustments and say, no, I don't want this here, or do this, or whatever. But he was pretty good about being done. And I'll tell you, Grape, that's one of the hardest things that writers and artists do that I run into is they constantly revisiting stuff constantly, and it makes publication difficult because you're constantly getting these new manuscripts, and even like Davis's when he sent his revised or whatever it was copy of A Stranger Among Us, I said just keep it. Dan's already edited this. I'm not going to ask Dan to edit it a new one, and just keep yours revised and you can fix it later or whatever. So it's always fun. Yeah, it's very weird, Gaetano. We've been doing Twitch streams. Chuck has been force-feeding me the Twitch thing for about 6 months now. And we do a regular show Thursday night at 8 o'clock called Jim's Trek to the Trade. Join us if you can. Tim Burns does a show on Wednesday at noon or 1 where he discusses World Anvil and aired on the World Anvil. and then I do a show on Tuesday. I really don't know why I did those backwards, but there you go. I do a show on Tuesday for, I think, kind of an Ask Me Anything. And I've gotten a little bit used to it, but it's very, it is a little disconcerting. There is no doubt. Yes, there's no energy, and that's kind of I'm curious how the game's going to go tonight, because I feed off of the players when the players are having fun and joking and laughing and killing stuff, and it helps my GMing energy. Maybe we should sell like a rock. Remember those rocks we had when we were little? It had little googly eyes on them. What a great invention. Things were just simpler back in the 70s. I remember I got mine at, must have been the Four Seasons, because my dad was in the Army, and it was just a little bitty rock in one of those gumball machines, and it had two little googly eyes on it. Pretty cool. I think I still got it somewhere. I need to track that thing down. That was my friend. He was my buddy. Let's see, I can say that Gary was like that as far back as AD&D 1E, PHP and DMG. He was very willing. That Tim Cass, he was very willing to revisit sections if you brought something back to him with questions, but he generally didn't send it in massive rewrites after he gave it to the editing team. Yeah, he was very good about that. It made working with Gary. I have to say, working with Gary was an extraordinary pleasure, even when he was angry with me, and he certainly got angry with me on occasion. It was fine because it was all business, but Gary was very professional and very business savvy, so he knew kind of what, because he had run TSR, obviously, he knew what I was going through, and Mac, when he was running the company, what we were going through here in managing print runs and all this other stuff, especially when we opened up the print shop. So he was very forgiving and all that stuff. Absolutely loved working with Gary. When he passed, it was a horrible, horrible thing. Do you think this will lead to one of your game companies to up the ante and put together a much better virtual system to bring together the best of some of those online systems that also fix their failing? Great to see something have built-in things to work with the different systems more seamless. Yeah, absolutely. Vonolil. I can't say that name. I can barely speak English, so don't be offended if I can't pronounce your name. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that Tim and Chuck have been hammering on. Mostly Tim in this regard. Tim Burns is our communications director here, and he takes care of all things online. And essentially what I'm trying to do is get to hire enough people that I don't have to do anything. I can just kind of sit here and act like I do stuff. But haven't quite got there yet. Getting there soon. But so anyway, so Tim manages that, and he's heading up the whole World Anvil site. Now, if you're not familiar with World Anvil, Chuck, if we can get that up in the feed, I'd appreciate it. You may have already done that. World Anvil is a site that's allowing us to move the world of Aird. And just to give you an idea, the world of Aird is not a small thing. Its primary book is 352 pages. You've got a globe, and then you've got the lands of Ursula, and there's monster books and players' guides that come out with it. All of this stuff is being moved into, yeah, that's what I do, Douglas, constantly. All of this stuff is being moved into World Anvil with the idea that the end user, everybody that's playing in the world of Aird, can access adventures, can access encounters, can create their own kind of variants of the world online. And eventually, we'll have, the player character classes from Castles and Crusades, all of these things on there, which you'll be able to kind of sit at your table and play. And obviously, we're at the beginning of this, but this, when you look at, I've got two sons that are on Steam a lot, and they game online a lot. And when you look at the way the new generation, the Zoomers, I'm not sure what they're called, whatever we're calling the youngins these days, you can see that they're in a different world, completely different world than us, and it's cool. I mean, when you look at it, I don't look at it as something as, they don't have the little rock with the eyeballs on it. Youngins. They've taken what was created and made it better, and their gaming experiences are just really cool. Watching them play, and it gets crazy sometimes. And I know the gaming community can be it can be a rough community in that regard. But it's absolutely a fantastic platform, and absolutely somewhere where RPGs need to be. It's not even a thing the market needs to grow, or we need to teach these young people how to RPG or role play. They're already doing that. What we need to do is become part of that, because that platform was, and I want to do this really nice roundabout. That platform, not roundabout, I hate roundabouts, but that platform was made for RPGs. It was made for what we do. And Gary knew it. And here's my turnabout. Gary knew it because he showed me the manuscript that he wrote back in 80 or 79. I held the manuscript in my hand where he wrote a video game. He had created a video game, and of course, I didn't know him in 1980, but his idea was these computers that are being developed, this is where they're going. And Dungeons and Dragons, TSR in those days, needs to be on that platform. He knew it in 1980. We know it now. And I think finally we're beginning to see, and by this accident of fate, Gary Kahn has certainly landed there. We're beginning to see that actually kind of happen. And I'm not talking about the first-person games like Baldur's Gate or something where you're in there playing a character. I'm talking about what we do as role players when we're sitting around the table gaming together. And certainly we've been doing it some where we game remotely, right? You get on Skype or Fantasy Grounds or Roll20. But I think now with things like the World Anvil and other sites, you're beginning to see the whole thing integrated into this kind of environment that brings the tools of RPG onto the digital platform so that we can do what we do in RPG. We're not quite there yet. I'm certainly not quite there yet, but maybe soon. We'll see tonight as I stumble and stagger through my 6 o'clock game. So Gary had carte blanche. You were never compelled to challenge him on an editorial level. Oh no. That's a delicate thing because I had extraordinary respect for Gary, and Gary's experience played heavy in my own counsel. I had final say, really, on what was published. Now, Gary had final say on his material, and he owned it. There were several times that we butted heads, but never to the detriment of our relationship. I would frequently defer to him because of his experience. I'm not one that could discount, I listened to my dad. When my dad told me things, I kind of listened to him because he knew how to do stuff. So to me, to buck the system made no sense. And I treated Gary much the same way. Much of what he said made sense, and I would follow through with it. There was 2 times I can think of offhand that we butted heads. I yielded on one and didn't on the other. And the first one, he was right, was the title of these books here, his world-building books. He wanted them to be called the Gygaxian Fantasy World Series. It had everything in it. It had a concept of world building. It had a concept of a fantasy game, and it had his name tied to it. But I thought it was so cumbersome to say that it would impact sales and that it wouldn't fall off of people's tongue easily. But I acquiesced, and in the end, he was correct. He was right. It worked beautifully. It's not too cumbersome. It was a great thing. And then the second time was the cover of Cosmos Builder. The original cover art, it had more of a kind of an old school, and I didn't want an old school feel to it. None of the other covers had that. The Cannon Crew had that wire effect. The World Builder had the puzzle effect. They all just had a kind of a look and feel about them. And this one was the first one that broke free of that, and I didn't like it. And he acquiesced. He said, okay, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. And he loved that cover. He would mention that cover to me a number of times after the book was published. He did not let me forget it. But it definitely, it was a very give and take. It's again, when I said this earlier, working with Gary was a sheer pleasure, even when we disagree. Because it's my favorite Gary story of all time. I've told it. Many of you probably heard it. But I can't now remember what it was. It's something to do with Castles and Crusades. When we were doing CNC, when we were making the rules for CNC back in 03 and 04, or whatever that was, because it was being written for us, but it was also being written for Castle Zagged. Gary had to give approval on the rules so that he could write his Castle Zagged for it. And so we'd just shoot him the rules, and there was never any problem. Twice, 3 times, whatever. But once he heard something online on a message board, and I came back Sunday, and it was just, my email was just filled with this rage. He was very angry. But at the end of it, it was very interesting, because at the end of the email, it said, it said Gary, and then he had his little saying, I can't remember what it was, it's something about the river. And beyond that, it said, postscript, I know Pete's got a birthday coming up. Do you think that he would like some bow and arrows? And Pete, my son, was like 4 or something at the time, I don't know. And when it was this amazing ability, and Gary had this in spades. It was his amazing ability to be angry on a business level, and to be kind on a personal level. So it's just a cherished moment of mine, and really showed me what it was like. It really kind of tells everyone what it was like working with Gary. Let's see, great. Is today the first day for the Kickstarter? No, I think we're 12 or 11 days into it. So for those of you who may not know, TLG is running a Kickstarter at the moment. It's our Castle Keeper's Guide. It is a gigantic tome, 350 color pages, filled with all manner of just stuff for world building and game designing. Now, it's written, of course, for Castles and Crusades, but most of it, probably half of it, I don't want to say most, but probably about half of it is easily usable on any game system. And much of that stuff that is written for C&C is easy enough to convert. You just have to change a challenge level to a difficulty level or whatever it is. So definitely visit that out. I think Chuck's put yep, there it is, the link to it. We've got maybe 12 more days. I'm not sure, somewhere around in there. But definitely go give it a look. Go look see. I know we're all in a crazy time, but check it out if you can. And also for those who have not, we're going to have 32 new pages. So this will be our third printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide. It'll have 32 new pages in it. A lot of that's going to be illustrations. I've decided that the book is a really good resource. I use it a lot when I'm both running a game, but also when I'm building scenarios and even working on the world affairs. It's got things like sizes of towns and villages, biomes, critical hit charts, special abilities, secondary skills, combat wastage, components. I mean, it's literally, the index is over on the Kickstarter. Go just look at the index and you'll get an idea of what's in there. But I want a lot of it illustrated. When I was running a game a couple months back, there was a sea adventure going on, and I hate those digest books. I hate those digest books so much. I don't know. We'll look into it. They drive me crazy. They're so hard to make. So we have our own print. Well, let me finish my first comment, my first ramble there. It's going to have lots of illustrations. When I was running the sea adventure, I didn't know what a cog actually looked like, so I had to go look it up. And I thought, this is what this book needs. So we're going to illustrate a lot of it. Types of wagons, types of houses, types of fortifications, like what's the difference between a moat and a bailey, a moat and bailey, and a keep. I want the end user to be able to open this book and say, okay, that's what this looks like. That's what we're going for. So it'll have more content. We're going to do a little bit of a sword and wizardry throw over and quite a bit of illustrations in there. So on those digest books, so those little guys, I don't think I have one handy. Troller Games owns its own print shop. If we do hardcover, it's printed in Missouri. We don't outsource any of our stuff. Everything is in the everything here is manufactured in the United States. Even the paper is manufactured here in the United States and cut here in the United States. But the die, so we have our own print shop, and if it's soft cover, we do it. If it's hardcover, our printer does it. And we are capable of doing digest books. Now, some of the equipment we have is new, but particularly the trimmer, the cutter, is a 1958 Challenger, something, CH something, Challengeworth, whatever, I don't know. It's this 70-year-old industrial strength hydraulic cutter. Now that piece of equipment is one of my favorite pieces of equipment on earth. The thing works like a dream. You just put hydraulic fluid in it, it keeps going. I think we broke one shear pin off of there's a huge bar. The bar comes down, holds your paper, blade comes down, cuts the paper, and there's shear pins that hold the bar, and one of the shear pins broke, and we just took it to a machine shop. They had us a new one made in 24 hours, and we were back in business. There's no computers, there's no updates, there's no restarting it or reloading it. It's just you turn the thing on and you cut the paper. The problem is the block is so heavy and comes down with so much weight that if you do more than one digest book, because the book is so tiny, it breaks the binding and you got to throw it in the trash. You got to do it again. So those little digest books are crazy hard to make. Now Mark, Mark works as part-time now, but he was full-time last year. Mark can do those things fast. He's done them so many that he knows how to do it, but he's only part-time now. So I'll have to talk to Mark and see if he wants to mess with digest books again. We may throw that in there because I know that, man, everybody loves them. And they're so tiny. They're so funny. I don't know how you read them, but good stuff. So we're kind of coming to the end here. I want to, again, we've got about 10 more minutes, but I want to thank everybody for showing up. We surely do appreciate it. I know Luke Gygax and all of the people at GaryCon appreciate your support for this crazy difficult time for GaryCon as they've moved everything over virtually and done, holy Carolina, they've done a fantastic job at it. Thank you all for showing up today for our stream here, and really, honestly, thank you for the follow. It is very much appreciated. If you haven't, give us a follow there, and head back over and do some rabble rousing at GaryCon. It'll be great. Good stuff. And we'll all be getting, this flu, whatever, this coronavirus, whatever, COVID-19, whatever you're calling it, it's here. It's part of what we are now. We're all going to get used to it. We'll get through this like we always do. By this time next year, we'll just be taking a couple pills for it, moving on. There is light at the end of this tunnel, and it's sooner than you think, I suspect. But anyway, thank you all for showing up. So anyone have any last questions? We've got a few more minutes to spin out. I'm doing something, I don't know, at 4. Chuck, what am I doing? And we march on. Yes, indeed. I think we're doing a Troll Lord panel at 4, and we're going to discuss, Tim will be joining me for that one. We're going to be discussing publishing in the past, publishing today, and publishing in the future. So, yeah, that's it. TLG, past, present, future, 4 p.m. So if you can, please join us for that one, too. I'll be sitting here jibber-jabbering, and Tim will join me, and we'll do a little jibber-jabber there, too. Skype, Steve, start the roll, baby. Wait, what? Steve, now, Chuck, you got to stop speaking in half sentences. I don't know what that means. Start the roll, baby. Tim, what's he talking about? Question, what is your most prized possession from the old days of the beginning of Dungeons & Dragons? So there was a company called, what is it? My brain's not working. We Warriors Productions. And they did this little bitty book. They did a few little bitty books, and one was called Dwarven Glory. And that little book, I had so much. Davis was running me. My main character came to that, and I had so much fun in that little book. I absolutely loved that We Warrior production of Dwarven Glory. Fantastic piece of writing. I didn't know what he was talking about.
You put it on the wrong side. We're going to raise.
Oh. Okay, still, we arrange for the couch. Okay, 10 minutes till end. Okay, so we're going to do a raid. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Love Dwarven Glory. Absolutely love that little adventure. Now, and I don't want people to think that I didn't love TSR. I got Village of Hamlet in my desk right here, and the B1 still one of my all-time favorite adventures. Mainly because you could change anything that's in there. But Dwarven Glory was just awesome. It was just the cover was cool. You can find it online. I don't know if you can buy it, but you can certainly see the cover. Go check it out if you haven't heard of it. It's really a cool little thing. I'd love to see TLG put all the We Warrior stuff out. But I think someone got the license of it not too long ago. All right, so we're going to be doing a raid here soon. So I don't really get how these things work, and we do it 48 times a week, but I'm still not quite guessing. Yeah, what am I doing? I don't know what's going on. So we're doing a raid here soon. So if I log off very quickly, it's because I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm doing. So thank you all for showing up. I really do appreciate it. Love the questions. Keep them coming, and we will see you at 4 o'clock. So what am I doing? I still don't get this.
You're going to raid by...
But do I wait for Chuck to say end stream? Because he's already done something with the raid here. End stream. Okay, I got to go. Take care, everybody.